everyone. Today we have our another new episodes and we will discuss on sustainable cities. But we have our world famous speaker, Dr. Viva from Reduction Tech. She gonna discuss about Reduction Tech, and we have our best friend from Transhumanist Party, Mr. Jason. So we will discuss together about Reduction Tech technology and how it will be benefit for the peoples, benefit for both in developed and developing nations. First, I would like to give chance Dr. Viva.
Okay, so who's talking first?
Viva.
Okay,
Well,
hi everyone. Hi
yeah, I
everyone.
would love to hear more what you. I remember your. Sorry to interrupt, but I remember your salon from back then, and
Yeah.
I loved it. And I would love to hear more about that tech.
Okay, well, it's we're getting more information about it out on our YouTube channel, and I'm giving slide presentations about 3 a week, and then every Sunday at 5 o'clock, I'm going to start holding a live stream session where I give a presentation and then people can ask all kinds of questions, because we really realize that the whole science of the atmosphere is a big miss for a lot of people. And the smart molecule in the atmosphere is the hydroxyl radical. So it's being inundated by human pollution right now. So we want to get our tech up and running to reinstate that, which will help cities a lot. Cities could actually hire this tech to clean their air, set it up in upstream situations and have it clean the air for them around their cities. But one of the things we know that's happening with cities is they're downsizing the combustion vehicles. So as they phase that out, the natural hydroxyl will bounce back. But we think there are tipping points with methane right now that are going to run away a little bit on us. And we do need to get some of this technology up and running to balance that out and capture us. The goal we have now for climate change is to basically get enough hydroxyl from our tech up into the atmosphere to get humanity past the climate disaster by 2021. So that's where we're at. And I need to talk to lots of people and get all kinds of people coming to listen and see what we're saying about the different aspects of doing something like this as a global cleansing event for humanity.
Mhm. Excellent. Mr. Jason, you want to
Awesome.
add because reduction tech
So, yeah, you
around the
mentioned
world? So, yes.
you mentioned the methane. Uh, how real do you think the threat is of all the methane underneath the permafrost melting? And then is that like this huge thing that we should be worried about? And does your tech help with methane?
Yes, the hydroxyl is nature's #1 methane remover. And everybody else in science is saying, oh, we don't know how to get at the methane that's diluted through the atmosphere that's now building up there, except to bring the atmosphere to a piece of equipment with big suction fans and try and get at the methane that way, which is very inefficient compared to doing basically a dispersal to the pollution like methane and getting it out there where it's normally dealt with anyway. So we're sending out the help to the atmosphere as a large medium rather than trying to bring it in and get one gas at a time. There are there's other big tech now, carbon engineering and Climeworks, that are going to bring the whole atmosphere into their possession in their equipment and only remove carbon dioxide one gas at a time. So it's, I think, more efficient for us to be talking and introducing a more efficient solution like what we have, which is to get all the greenhouse gases all at once, because that's actually the fastest route to global cooling.
Thank you. Mr. Jason, anything you want to add?
Yeah. I'm wondering, you know, trying to play like devil's advocate or whatever. One thing I think some people might be worried about is like a CFC situation. How
Mhm.
much danger do you think it? You know what I mean by like how the CFCs had like a runaway chain reaction or something
Yeah,
like that happen
you're
and it
talking
deleted
about
the
the
ozone.
ozone layer. The ozone layer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how
Okay.
dangerous is all that? With
Well, the ozone layer is recovering. They actually have announced that they think it'll be recovered on its own with natural cleansing processes and rebalancing happening with the reduction in the emission of all those CFCs by 2060 or 2070. Okay, so they think that everything will be reduced with the help of sunlight and oxide radicals up there in the stratosphere. So we would, if we were releasing the hydroxyl to the troposphere, one of the constraints we would have is to make sure that it just only mixes in the tropospheric layer, which is, about 20 kilometers up and below. So that would be our limit of where we would work, where it's the livable zone. And then the stratosphere is above that. And that's where the ozone filters out the cancer causing ultraviolet for us.
Mhm. Madam Viva, recently you released two video and we are heavily promoted in our social media. One is hydraulics safety issues. Another one is monitoring a global hydroxyl release. Can you say something
Mhm.
about your video? Because we have a lot of audience who are interested about your video and about the outcome of your technologies and how they can join in your ecosystem and help to grow your company.
Okay, thank you very much. The safety issues for the hydroxyl is, it's about, I think, 12 or 13 or 14 minutes. I'm not doing big videos, but I'm giving a fairly good PowerPoint, talking over the talking points so people understand a little bit about the science, how we've applied the science, and what is the science that is out in the peer-reviewed literature that we've looked at, that we can explain to you why it's important. Some of the safety issues are around how much should be put out there, what the limit is for that, what's already known about the safety of oxidants in the occupational health and safety world. Um, just different safety issues, like whether we'll shut down during a big weather event when we're emitting the hydroxyl. What will we do there? Just things like that, so people understand that we're managing within the environment that we're confronting on a day-to-day basis. We know what we're going to do in terms of, letting it run or turning it down, this type of thing. So that's the hydroxyl safety issues. What was the other video you mentioned, Sharif? Sharif, what was the other video?
One,
you
yes,
know,
yes. I'm sharing because I have to check. I have to check from my social media. And another one is monitoring a global hydroxyl release. Monitoring.
Yes. Okay, so now we have society with these amazing satellites that are going to identify who all the emitters are, right down to the actual site of the emission, which is amazing. I have to actually give a lot of compliments to the scientists that have done that, because the accountability was necessary, and they quietly took care of that business. So that's going to make things much, much better for us. And the other monitoring agencies around the world, like the United Nations, uh, Framework Convention on Climate Change, the World Health Organization, the World Food Program, that all the ones that talk about the lifestyle emissions and your income level, and how the higher income you have, the more carbon emissions you have. All of that discussion is being mixed in with actual data, and the monitoring of the global levels of all the criteria air pollutants now can be done for sure in the Northern Hemisphere. Australia also does it. That includes methane, NOx, particulate matter, ozone. There's quite a significant list. And most of those that I've listed, the hydroxyl removes as well. Okay, so it's been in the background giving us our Goldilocks planet since 2.3 billion years ago. People don't know that. So you can monitor all the pollution levels pretty much around the world. You can do it off of a ship, off of a plane. There have been lots of sampling campaigns where they've written and studied about the levels of pollution up in the clouds. And so the atmosphere is completely monitorable while we do a hydroxyl release.
Awesome. So, there's what, as far as like a policy, the USTP is like super in favor of new technologies that will actually go out there and clean up the environment. Me personally, I think that it is a way better approach to climate change to actually make some technology that will actually clean it up rather than try to rely on people's just good nature to, like, quit their addiction to fossil fuels kind of thing. I think
the honor system is not working, Jason. It's
right.
not working. We still see way too many people driving around by themselves in their vehicle. That's a huge one right there. So it's hard. It's really hard for people to take this on board because this is all kind of invisible. Our garbage, this garbage that we create has been invisible until it started to rebound against us in the atmosphere, the weather system, and the climate.
Yeah.
So we're still struggling with it. And me coming with a technology business and asking people to pay us to clean that up for them as an individual or a government or a corporation, there's a few issues that have emerged for us with that. One of the things with the individuals that I see right now is inflation, COVID-19, and the climate disaster itself, food shortages, and the economic vulnerability of the emerging economies is going to make it harder for them to actually come up with the funding. So one of the things we did as a business is we tell everybody we are profit controlled and we're in the market scaling this technology to $50 a ton. Most of the other people are 100 or higher. Some of them are as 600 a ton. So that's where we're at. We're a company that wants to save society money for this as well, because it's, I think it's critically important that be done. And why not? If you can get all the gases all at once for a price like that, why not do it?
Thank you. Mr. Mike. Mr. Mike, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Mr. Mike?
Hi, Jason. So I guess you've been talking about the...
Yes. What you want to share, especially we are discussing about the sustainable city.
Yeah, I just caught on sorry, I didn't join earlier. I was on another call. Some of the things I sort of picked up on is, it does come down to financial cost, and that's both for the consumer as well as for businesses, that if it's not economically competitive, you can't rely on goodwill, right? So, if you look at the overall, like the have and have nots, there's trillions of dollars in private capital that could be applied. And that's why solar and other renewable projects, it's not because they certainly got a conscience and they want to save the world, is they want to make money. So you have to appeal to that basic, right now in a capitalist society, and even in others, like it has to have economic justification, and that's what people are making their decisions on. And that's why in cars as well, why do people drive a car? I like to point out that in the United States, the percentage of trips that involve public transit is about 1%.
Yep.
So we don't have multimodal. We have a unimodal. It's a car addiction, right? We are addicted to cars.
Mm-hmm.
But I would go and saying it's not actually cars. It's the addiction to, we want to go anytime, anywhere in a private party vehicle and if you could have it where you could have a chauffeured limousine for the cost of a bus, then people would take it, right? They would drop it, and especially elderly that lose their mobility, especially young people that haven't gotten their mobility yet, people that can't, there's a lot of, and so that's what we're doing, is basically creating an infrastructure that can replace the roadways and highways, that is financially viable to be privately financed, where you don't need government funding in order to build the transportation infrastructure, and you're giving people a car-like experience. That is the recipe for success. If you can take trillions of dollars of private capital, build out an infrastructure that gives people what they want, and does a whole fast modal shift, that takes care of your transportation, both for passengers and goods. So that's kind of what we're doing, is the podways, and it looks like it's and we've been trying to keep it sort of on the down low, because we see the whole transition to electric vehicles and charging stations, just what a waste of time, what a waste of resources and mining and capital. We have less expensive than being able to replace the vehicles. We can build the infrastructure and make it where it's more efficient than any other mode, about as efficient as like an electric bicycle.
The convenience, if you can keep the convenience happening for people, you're going to win, Mike.
Right.
Yeah.
That freedom
based infrastructure. So we're replacing roadways. We're not replacing rail. We're replacing roads, and roads are the definition of convenience.
Mm-hmm. I think
the thing about cars is, like you said, everybody loves that freedom to just be able to go out, get in the car, and go anywhere I want, with nobody telling me what to do, where to go.
Except when they go to a bar and they want to drink, and then they can't bring their car home. License DWI, except if you're too elderly, you don't have the reaction time, and you can't drive. Except if you don't have a license, or if you're not financially amenable enough to be able to afford an expensive car. Except for all those cases, yes, cars.
Oh yeah, it's expensive too. I mean, my vehicle's one of my biggest bills out of everything. It's like, and I don't hardly use it.
Yeah,
it's like a couple times a month.
Housing, right? It's housing, then transportation, and then healthcare. Those are the top three.
So I wanted to go back, Mike, to what you mentioned about the investment consumers. Okay, we have an investment class that is, consuming ideas with a profit motive in mind, and they get together in very well organized high-end conferences and bring in the innovation talent from wherever the innovation talent is found, to come in and present the possibilities. And one of the things that you have to do when you're an innovator is make room for that initial high risk investment into the company, and your business model needs to be a lot of times have a profit margin that's higher than what you might want, because you're paying for their presence and their risk profile as well too. So the consuming of the innovation in the world is run on a pretty high it's a really big ticket item, and the carbon footprint for that in itself is very high. And the high net worth people, we try to broach the subject with them as much as we can nicely. Is we all need to really think that even though we don't have a forced system to reduce our emissions and we are relying on the honor system, we have to kind of put some pressure on all of ourselves to lower our emissions. And
Yeah. I don't think that's going to work. I think it's all economic.
yeah.
So let's take the funding side. So what we have is we have all the technologies to solve what all the problems that we now have. We have the technology. The problem is that we have the technology on the prototype side, but in order to get the large scale capital resources, it needs to be they need to see a first at scale implementation. And so there's this Death Valley funding gap between first pilot and the first operational system. And there's two different sides. There's the VCs that understand getting to a pilot, and then there's the large scale project financiers that understand how to scale up, but there's not capital to do that bridging. And my argument is that that's where government needs to be the first lost capital for promising technologies to go to full-scale commercialization. Because once you show the first-scale commercialization, then there's trillions of dollars that can be applied to that, and they're happy campers because they just don't understand risk. And so if they have somebody that takes first lost capital, that's pretty much how you can solve that.
Yeah, we had a combination. We also were very lucky around 2012 where we had a minister of state put in a little bit of money from government, as well as a couple of loans from some development initiative trusts that were running and lending money back at that time. They've since changed their policies, and I think that it would be really helpful if they brought that back. Exactly what you're saying is the first in funding, the seed funding would be very important for a lot of the investors in innovators, and it would protect the innovator a little bit from having to give up their company to exit the angel or the VC. Because if you give them enough room to bootstrap, they don't have to do that. And that's one of the most difficult things you have as an innovator. So that ecosystem does need a little bit of tweaking.
It does. And you can make it where it's not the government just sort of, the government can do it through low cost loans or matching loans, where it's reducing the risk threshold that the project guys are comfortable with, right? It's not just rolling up and just writing checks, but it's a partnership a little bit with the government. So for us, I've been able to basically it's low cost enough to get to where we can do our first projects, where now we just jump from just angel to full scale $1 billion projects, but that's very hard to do.
Yeah, it is. Most companies cannot do that. We're actually close to being like you. We have a fairly low tech system that just repeats itself. So it just needs to be built out as a repeating parallel system that continuously emits from a cell out to the atmosphere. And it has a small process instrumentation on it to keep the heat running and balanced and the pressure running, and that's it. We just keep track.
Is your technology called a tree? No.
I actually there's a second technology in behind this one that is kind of like a tree. It's called a CO2 crusher. And what we do is we take waste CO2. We hope to intercept some of the operations that are going to bury CO2 underground. And we take it into a soft steel vessel. We use a similar smart membrane. We put a little bit of heat, a lot of heat and a little bit of pressure in the vessel with pure carbon dioxide. And the molecule is split, which we did get a Nobel Prize nomination in chemistry for that in 2012. So it's already proven. And what you can do is with the membrane, you can treat the membrane so that the oxygen that comes across turns into O2, just like the trees do. And it can go back out to the atmosphere either as oxygen or a radical or hydroxyl. So you have some choices with our technology on what you want to do. The carbon that we found was amazing. It's called tetrahedrally amorphous carbon. It's the hardest known carbon in the whole carbon properties chart known so far. And we have a powder that we can make very quickly out of the vessel because we just run it into a stream of water and it instantly turns from a gas carbon into a solid carbon. And then we filter it and we have oodles and oodles of carbon powder that's diamond that can be sintered into all kinds of complex shapes and structural parts. So we're actually even talking to a company that does 3D laser printing, and they think they might be able to do a laser 3D printer with our powder. So I'm working on that as well. So I can convince people to commit to the CO2 crusher for advanced materials.
Well, that gets into economics. Is if you can take out the carbon and make a highly valuable substance like diamond, well, guess what? People will want to say, like, man, I just want to create diamonds. I don't care about the environment, but give me something that can make diamonds, and I'm good.
I've had that problem. I've had that problem. Yeah.
Yeah, good.
So because we can make so much of it, it lowers the value of diamonds. So I've had an investor say, "Oh no, you're going to take the price too low." So
did they say that?
Let me finish. What I did was I now am proposing that we bring the price down to about, at full scale, about $3.65 a pound, which is the same as hardwood, and then build building materials with it and put it in that market at that value.
That's one thing, but you could also say and give them a reminder that salt was once a currency and aluminum was once a currency. Right.
Yeah.
That was a method of currency. So, hey, things change. It's like, hey, you can't help, the De Beers and the whole diamond folks. There's such a narrow, and they've been controlling that market artificially for so many years. They deserve to be sort of, smacked around and given an alternative because
we're still here. So, one of the things we're watching is which of the fossil fuel operations are going to be mothballed. Like, there's going to be more information coming out about what's shutting down. And so once we get a handle on what is shutting down and what's going to remain in place, then we'll really push the CO2 pressure for that.
Yeah. But it will be about economics, right? You're just doing things much cheaper. So that's...
Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Jason, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'm wondering two things. I have a question for both of you. First of all, we got like the shale fields that, in 2014 or so, the shale revolution happened. We started getting oil a new way, so it put a whole new, thing on the market. It caused us to be energy independent here in the U.S., which has changed the geopolitics of the whole world. And as far as I know, I could be wrong at this point, but last I knew, the natural gas that's coming out of there is in some cases being just flared off, and I think I heard it's being priced as a waste product or something, which maybe why we have cheap natural gas here or whatever. But what I'm getting at is I had also heard that these shale wells have leakage. And I'm wondering if that's the case. I don't even think if it's, it's just investigative reporting that I've seen at this point. But
yes, it's true. The investigative reporting has announced that about 4 times more than what they thought was leaking has been found to be leaking. So the engineering of the well casing and this, the securing of the capture of the gases was inadequate. and it ended up being replicated throughout the industry, and we have this big problem with the leaking methane, exactly
Oh,
like that.
yes and
Jason.
no. Those reporters are no longer with us.
What happened to them?
What? Oh no!
Yeah.
No,
I prefaced all that. I prefaced all that with the good that it has done for, like the security of the United States and stuff. To say
but
that,
I think the
I'm not
potential-
against the shale fields or anything, or against.
Well, but
doing
here's the
that.
thing:
It's
if you can
just
make
that-
a global detection, so use your satellites and detect methane plumes, and now be able to have a rigorous way of being able to detect when you have these, terrible things. You can do it at a distance. You don't have to have on-site monitoring. If you can do it from satellites, God bless you, because that now you can just look. I mean, look, we can look at the chemical composition of exoplanets that are, thousands of light years away. So we should be able to use satellite technology and just peer down and just say, damn, there's a big leak right there. Let's take care of that. And
Well, hopefully what they'll do now that they have this in place is they'll give us some examples. And I think they just started doing it, of saying, oh, we found a big release here at this site, and they're announcing it just to make sure that there's some accountability. So hopefully the accountability will occur, and hopefully another thing that will happen is that the engineering will upgrade itself so that we can, if we're going to have some natural gas around, we're going to use a system where the leakages are stopped. For example, in Alberta, the oil patch in Alberta, the emissions, the government has an emissions outlet where they fund methane solutions, methane leaks, and they've come out with how to seal it off, different ways. You can either seal it off, they've got different techniques for that, or some technology treatment that's applied to it at site to destroy the methane before it gets away on them. So they are working on leak control, and they'll probably go to some kind of fundamental change in the way they do the wells too, I'm sure.
But here's the key thing, is that a free market needs to price in all these negative externalities, because if these negative externalities are not priced in, then you really don't have a free market where you're making the best decisions, because you're not factoring in the most critical elements of it. So, leaks should have an economic, impact. If you're an oil company, you say like, okay, last year we were fined, 0.1% of our profits because we did something bad. Is like, great. Then we'll just do more bad stuff, because what are they going to do? They're going to fine us 0.1%,
Yeah, externalities, we're learning right now with climate change are not desirable in any way, shape, or form, really. And they're certainly not cheap. They end up being 10 times more expensive than the prevention that could have been built in.
Right, but if it's not priced out, if you can buy a home that's cheap, like 10% cheaper, but is 10 times more expensive over the lifetime of the home that is 50 or 100 years, that's a problem, right? That's where government needs to have intervention, but it's intervention of just pricing the negative externalities, so that way you can have a market economy where consumers can just look at two things on the shelf, and they don't need to know anything other than price, right? They don't have to be goody two shoes and say, I want to buy the green thing. They're like, no, I'm going to buy the cheapest thing. And that can only happen if you price in the negative externalities that make it where the things that should cost more do cost more. So if you're looking at beef, why don't we have, the water and methane and the pollution factored into that? Because then it would price beef higher and other things lower, or whatever we're trying to do. Just
that's one of the reasons. It's actually, I think they ignore externalities as a method of providing a subsidy to the activity.
Yes, and that's why we have like the carbon credits, which have been abused, and the and then you have the big oil companies just saying like, oh, good, free money, give me your free money, and we'll say that we're saving a tree. It's like, what a sham, what an absolute con job on the taxpayers and everyone else. It's like, oh my God, who did you have write this legislation? The oil companies?
Well, somebody just made a comment here that I want to address. Stop forcing me to pay for diapers that don't biodegrade. I'm just a consumer. One of the
Right.
things I was noticing the other day is that women are kind of plastic victims. There are companies that do feminine care products, and they're using oodles of plastic. The diapers that have to be used are, and all of them by law should be biodegradable. All of it should be biodegradable. It's not, So anyway, the government doesn't, it doesn't do everything that it could.
Well, okay, but imagine you had a company that did have a new innovation that allowed you to sort of have washable or reusable diapers. Let's just say it was this magical container like a dishwasher. You can put it in, you get clean stuff on the outside. But to the consumer, maybe it costs twice as much as what you could buy for a plastic diaper, diaper or feminine products.
Mm-hmm.
But because the externalities of the impact of that plastics is not reflected in the price, if it was reflected in the price, then the plastic product would have been more than the reusable. But that's an example of where you can't make good decisions because the impact.
How do you do that, though?
The government has to.
I mean, how do you do that?
Somehow price signaling needs to be looked at and analyzed, more thoroughly.
A price on carbon, a price on methane, a price on, price out the things that are causing the degradation of the environment. If those things aren't priced out.
Yeah. The peer-reviewed science has come out with, I think, $1,200 costs to society for methane, and then another really big cost to society for a ton of CO2. They've done that. They've done some analysis on it, but the government hasn't really taken it on board. So we have, like, what else besides carbon has this price signal?
Not enough. We usually just have EPA and just says you can't use this stuff. You don't. I'm a firm believer. Just price out. It's like if you I've
heard a saying that when put a tax on bads, not on goods.
Not a tax. Just say there's a price where you have a market economy. So it's not necessarily a tax, because a tax says you're taking it, and it's more of that you're pricing it out such that it's a balancing of that. It's like.
It's protection.
It's pricing externalities. It's hard for a consumer to price externalities. Only a government is really in a position for pricing externalities. They can't be an individual consumer.
It's a regulatory issue, really.
It's a regulatory. Yeah. Which is regulatory is usually government, because you're acting in the best interest of the society at large, which should be what the government does, right? The government should be a representative for the people that can't act in their own individual best interest to protect from anything, misinformation, plastics, whatever.
Yeah, and sugar is being targeted. The sugar in food is being targeted, with proposals for a sugar tax, which is halfway there on the whole issue, because in Canada we just got nationwide dental care for people, of limited means, and most of the kids in Canada, doesn't matter what household they're in, are drinking pop and have 6 cavities and whatnot. So I have pointed out to the government here that, what are you doing with the sugar while you're fixing the teeth, from the sugar? So, and pointing out to them how illogical their policy is,
Right. But the problem is the government is basically owned by the lobbyists, which are owned by the people that can hire the lobbyists, which are the people that have the status quo, that have the money in order to, write the laws that benefit them. So it's a real problem, because we're making bad decisions in government because money is talks, and everything else is like, environment. I don't have a lot. Environment doesn't have a lobbyist. Mother Nature has not paid her lobbyist bill. She's not hiring the right lobbyists. So,
man, you remind me of Elon Musk if he was cool. and like not all socially awkward and shit, you know.
I've had in the last 6 months a few people that says I even physically resemble the that, but yeah, it's
A little bit.
except yeah, I'm not an asshole, so it's and hopefully
Way
when I'm
cooler, yeah. And not being an asshole would be good. Yeah. So
So I
tell us
wanted to
more about your Transit X Pod. What is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
What's that called?
so give me 30 seconds of my pitch is that essentially we're creating a pod infrastructure that's replacing the roadways. So imagine if it was we could provide an infrastructure that's less costly than roadways, but provided you higher capacity than rail for the efficiency of a bicycle and the safety of commercial flights. So we're providing, and it could be privately financed. So we're talking about privately financed transportation infrastructure for people and goods. So that way we could do, and factories can crank it out at a rate of, so we could essentially replace most of the world's roads and highway systems with podways in a very short period of time to decarbonize and make efficient. So if you could eliminate congestion, crashes, pollution, carbon emissions, and do it quickly, and that's what we're doing. We're going to, you haven't heard about us, and that's a good thing, because I just want to be the little bacteria that's infects all these automobile manufacturers and EV, and nobody sees us coming, and that's a good thing. So
Where's your website? What's your website?
transitx.com.
transitx.com. Cool.
Yeah, so we've done proposals
podways
all around the world and we have 5 countries that are moving forward with podway systems, and more on the way. So we don't have to do public PR. We just have to have the connections with the high level government officials, at the mayor, the governor, and the presidents, and just get through the corruption barriers that you sometimes face in a lot of developing countries and developed countries. It's all over. It's bad decision making is an endemic in our capitalist society, where the people with the money just can buy out. It's pretty bad, It's
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Definitely, Transit X actually partner of World Talent Economy Forum, and while we develop our city, Transit X also develop their transportation system. So I think we are almost finishing our work in Bangladesh, and next month in India.
I'll give you so if you go to transx.com/city cc.pdf, we are showing you how you can build dense cities, new cities, without any roads. So 50% of your land area is open or green space, but it's very high density. So you're combining the best of what a city offers, what a suburb offers, and you're able to, because there's all this movement to cities. So if you can make it where you don't need to use half your land area for cities, for parking lots and highways and roadways. Imagine what's the land value of half the land space of just, say, a little area like Manhattan. Imagine just the economic that you can unlock when you don't need to use half your land area for transportation purposes. It's a lot. It's a lot.
That is a lot. Well, I mean, that's a gift to potential green spaces. Just that one item.
Yeah, health. Yeah, your health impacts. This basically saves the world, and I'm happy to do it. It's very tricky to get to that position where you have the financial resources and the political. And the only thing that's been holding us back is the VAT. 99% of the government say, this is great, but we just need to see it working somewhere else. So you say, like, yeah, we want something, new and innovative, but we can't do that because we don't see it operating anywhere else. So I'm like,
yeah, we deal with that regularly. Yeah. Or their risk appetite. It doesn't fit with their risk appetite.
Well, so what I say is that they overestimate the risk of anything that's unfamiliar, and they underestimate the risk of all the existing risks that they now take with health and pollution and time and everything else. So we show them that the lowest risk option, that this is the lowest risk option, because look, we're not asking you for money. we're saving you on your road maintenance costs. You don't have any accidents or crashes or all this stuff, and you're having economic growth and development and jobs. So why would you not do it? You know, just because your mayor can't, you know, go to some place and ride something. I mean, just if you want an automated transit system that is very simple, well, go into a building and go in an elevator. And if you need a seat, bring a chair. You know, there's lots of examples of you know automated transit systems, and there's one been operating in the United States in Morgantown for 45 years. So you know, you're not talking about anything that's so different that doesn't have examples that haven't been in operation for 50 years. But
yes,
you have
but
to
the issue there for you would be education, and we have the same issue with the hydroxyl dispersal. You know, no other scientist on the planet came up with the idea that oxidation that happened back with the great oxygenation event cleaned up all the greenhouse gases back then, sponsored increased biodiversity, increased mineral diversity, plant diversity, brightened clouds, calmed the weather, did all this amazing stuff that we talk about. And, you know, it's not a big leap for people, and we'll teach it for them to see that we have the same molecules that we can now emit for that same kind of thing to happen. And we'll show them that it's not that big of a leap. Yeah.
So think about, I had just a real brainstorm, so I haven't really thought about this, but imagine, you know how there's contrails out of commercial aircraft? Imagine we could have an additive or something to existing jet engines that could somehow basically use the existing flight patterns around the world to basically do geoengineering by releasing the right types of elements in the atmosphere to do the cleanup. And we could use that as, you know, I have no idea if that's even practical, but the idea of using our existing infrastructure that's dirtying the planet and using it to clean up the planet is so attractive.
Yeah, you want to go to new fuels.
You know, there's a whole conspiracy theory about that, by the way.
Yeah, you want to go
to conspiracy theory about everything, but
you want to go to low carbon fuels, because with most combustion, the particulate is coming from carbon that's incompletely combusted. So it ends up as a particulate in the atmosphere all the time. And that's pretty much across the board for all the hydrocarbons. So one of the things we're working on in the back room is making hydroxyl in concentrated levels and using it as an oxidizer for aviation fuel, so that we can lower the carbon content of the fuel and keep the power of the fuel very high, because concentrated hydroxyl would be very powerful and it's carbon free, and it would help clean the atmosphere because it would not be contributing as much.
Right.
Okay, excellent. We have to go for the concluding remarks for today. Mr. Mike, what you want to add as a concluding remarks for today's session?
I'll keep it short. It's like, yeah, check out transitx.com and you'll be like, wow, we can actually do this. It's like, yep, we can do this.
Excellent. Madam Viva, what's your concluding remarks for today?
I'm giving live streams at 5 p.m. On Sundays, Pacific Standard Time, about the hydroxyl dispersal. We'll do a short presentation and then I'll answer anybody's questions about any aspect of it.
Excellent. Mr. Jason.
Can you drop your YouTube link somewhere, maybe in the comments of this, or I don't know, somewhere, so we can find that? Because I can, like, I know the rest of the USGP is probably going to want to, you know, hear about this. Maybe we could do another salon with, you know, too. You know, I'm in this other group called the Omni Futurists, where we're looking at the economic singularity and the whole transit of the cities and everything is an interesting dilemma that we were going over. And I'm probably going to, like, check out your Transit X and show it to the rest of them. And, you know, just saying it looks pretty cool. We'll have to be in touch. I'll be letting people know but I know about this new technologies.
Mhm.
That's
I'm
the future. I
trying
think technology is going to
I'm-
get us out of this mess. You know, I think.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining
Okay,
today
hang
this
on.
session.
I do have the link, so I'm just sending it now. There it is. That's to the live stream on Sunday.
Okay, thank you. We are sharing your live streaming in our social media. Thank you. Bye bye and take care.
Okay, thanks a lot, Sharif.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.